Global HLP Responsibility meeting for the fourth quarter for December 2025. It's really good to be with you and to have you join us. Thank you. We'll be recording the meeting just to share with colleagues who can't make it. So please bear that in mind. And yes, you're very welcome at any point to raise your hand if you want to comment or ask questions or come in. Feel free to use the chat. That is we'll be watching that closely, so you're very welcome to put in there any comments, questions, things that are arising. And how we do these things, there is an agenda and a structure, but we want to be informal and allow interaction and questions and discussion. So please do feel free. You're very, very welcome. I'm just going to share slides with the agenda on, and then we can get going. So let's see. Okay, so here's our agenda for today. I'm going to give you an update on the Global Humanitarian Reset, these discussions that have been going on for a long time. And we have a kind of update on the new cluster for HLP, and it'd be good to hear your thoughts on how that's looking. Then we're going to hear from our colleagues working in South Sudan on some work they're doing on HLP shelter settlements, an update on what they're doing. We're going to hear from our colleagues who are coordinating on HLP in Gaza and Palestine, an update on there in terms of what's HLP looking like in the context of the ceasefire and planning for recovery and next steps. So much going on around that. We'll hear briefly from an update from a colleague working with the team in Nigeria on a piece around women's HLP rights. We thought that would be interesting. And Trezor will give us an update on the information management and analysis, just what he's been working on this last few months and looking into next year. Then we want to take a moment to think about next year and what are the priorities that you have, colleagues, any ideas, things that you want to see guidance on, and we'll have a discussion on that. Eleonora, the co-chair from UN Habitat, has prepared a sort of survey, a way to put those questions in writing. She's going to share that link in the chat for you to have a look at through the meeting, but we will have a little bit of time to talk through that as well. And then, of course, we'll have a moment for any updates from yourselves, anything you want to share, and any other business. So yeah, my name's Jim Robinson. In case you don't know me, I should have said that at the beginning. I'm the co-coordinator of the Housing, Land and Property Responsibility on behalf of NRC. And this is co-led with UN Habitat, and Eleonora Serpi is their colleague there. She will be leading parts of this meeting as well. So welcome from us. And I realised that with the developments and the way things are going with the new cluster, this will likely be the last meeting in terms of us as an AOR. So that's something to sort of, I suppose, reflect on a little bit. And also not the last in terms of we will keep meeting. There will be space for HLP to be discussed and thought about in terms of humanitarian response. And we'll just have to see how the new format for that develops. So that's our agenda. I've also put it in the chat. And like I was saying before, please do introduce yourselves in the chat. And if you would like to speak in French, you're very welcome to. You can use the chat in French as well. And we'll have people who will help translate both ways. So do let us know if you would like that. Okay, so first thing, also, it's always nice if you can turn your camera on, even just to say hello. It's always very nice to know that there are people behind the names. A lot of you are known to each other and to me, so it's always nice to say hello. Feel free to wave and then put your camera back off if that works best for you, but just nice to know you're there, see who we're dealing with. So it's good to see you. And yes, you're very welcome. So let's press on with the first item in the agenda, which is an update on the ongoing discussions around the humanitarian reset. Let me just find the right presentation. And then, my computer's decided to go in slow motion, of course. This one, I believe. Okay, good. So yes, the update for the new cluster, for the reset, the discussion that's going on. So as you know, throughout the year, we've been discussing what's going to be happening with the HLP coordination, all these processes going on, discussions and decisions that there would be a new joint CCCM shelter and HLP cluster. And finally, after many months of discussions and all the rest of it, we now have it's been decided that the cluster lead agencies at the global level for this new cluster will be IOM and IFRC. So that's the two agencies that will be taking forward the overall coordination of the new cluster. And we also have a provisional name that has been proposed, which is the Shelter Land and Site Coordination Cluster. So I imagine that will be called the SLSC or something like that. But yeah, so that was a process where, you know, I know a number of you have contributed ideas and suggestions around what this cluster could be called, what we need to include with it, what does it need to embrace, and the conversation again also with other lead agencies and others as well. We agreed that, you know, focus on shelter provides that sort of emergency humanitarian edge to it. Land, which we know is core to anything you're trying to do around shelter and site coordination. So we're really pleased to have land in there in the name, because it feels like it allows us and the areas that we all work on with HLP to really be included within that cluster as well. So that's where we're up to in terms of the new cluster. Now, we haven't formalized and finalized the scope of the cluster, but this is what is being proposed. So the idea is, and I appreciate there's a lot of colors suddenly hit you there on the screen. The idea is to have these core priorities, which essentially are the things that the three areas, CCCM, Shelter, HLP, were looking at before. But we're trying to think about how to integrate these things. So they're not just three separate pillars, but what do these things actually mean? So core priorities we're suggesting will include, you know, shelter and essential household items, which will also include HLP, thinking around security of tenure, due diligence, those kind of things. The same is true of sites and settlements planning, and site and area-based management and coordination. All these things about where do people stay, where do they live, how do they have some kind of safety and security in the place that they stay whilst they're displaced or whilst they're being impacted by crisis. And we think all of those areas do include an HLP aspect in terms of thinking about security of tenure, thinking about due diligence, thinking about how best to ensure people have access to those things. We also then have a core priority of housing, land and property sort of on itself. And that's to make sure we include a focus on those broader HLP issues that often are considered as part of the protection response. So that's when we're thinking about, you know, evictions, we're thinking about documentation, we're thinking about restitution, access to housing, land and property for women, inheritance rights, all of those things that have maybe a more kind of legally rooted aspect as well in terms of the actual programming and the work we do, are also going to be part of this cluster, because we know that has been a question that's come up. What happens to those aspects of HLP that feel like they're protection things, right? So we're not saying there isn't any protection issues coming up in this cluster. We're going to make sure those things are included, as we're working now. So also, you can see there's some kind of cross-cutting issues and areas as well, particularly around the link between what we're doing in the cluster in our humanitarian response and the work around solutions, thinking about disaster risk reduction, the nexus, all of these things where we need to see that spectrum of HLP issues and rights and challenges addressed. We've talked many times around this golden thread of HLP through all these different areas, and I think that's how we're trying to see that. And the wider conversation on the humanitarian reset has a real emphasis on, you know, making sure any humanitarian response, any of the work the clusters does, is focused on that kind of exit. How do we transition out? How do we make a plan to ensure that we're thinking longer term and beyond what we're immediately doing in the humanitarian response? So that's what's being proposed for the scope. That still hasn't been properly, you know, signed off and formalized, but they're the areas that we're looking at. Probably not a surprise, but we're hoping to be able to work in a really integrated way and to see how we are able to do that. So the question, I guess, for us as people who are interested in housing, land and property, both from a practical practitioner HLP point of view in the humanitarian response, but also those more widely, what does it mean? Well, I think the first thing to say is around the timelines for this. So this new global cluster is expected to be operational from January. That's what we're working towards, the integration of these areas together. But that doesn't mean things follow the national level or the operational level from January in terms of how the coordination works. So globally, we'll start working together with Shelter, CCCM, HLP, and we're sort of developing a transition plan to finalize and identify. We've got the name, the scope, then also to understand the structure. So we have IOM and IFRC leading, but then we also have key roles for the other lead agencies in these areas. For example, NRC around HLP, and I know UNHCR and UN Habitat will be involved as well. And we're just sort of finalizing how exactly those things will work. I think it could be quite exciting in terms of having a bit more of a team around HLP that can work together from different agencies, but we need to sort of finalize what that will look like. We're going to establish a sort of transitional strategic advisory group, so we're almost like a trust to help hold this process. So there's already actors that do that role for Shelter, for CCCM, and for HLP we're looking at inviting the sort of key agencies and actors involved in that to be able to be part of that process. If you'd be interested in being involved in that, please let me know. You can either message me direct or put something in the chat. Because that's we want to have that represented. So through that process, we'll formulate what will be the SAG for the new cluster, but also look at things like how do we create the right structures, the right sort of support for what's needed. In the next period, there's going to be different paces of this transition happening. So one of the things that's been consistent throughout the discussion around the new cluster is that there's a global discussion and process going on, and then at country operational level, HCs, humanitarian coordinators, and their teams are encouraged to create the structure that is required in that country. So there's a kind of a freedom, there's a flexibility to decide what is needed. And I think for some countries, I'm already hearing that the HC is very keen for this new cluster to get going. For other countries, they're waiting to see what happens. In some places, they're creating other ways of working as well. So there's going to be two different processes. There's that global discussion going on, and we aim to support HLP coordination, HLP in response, however it's happening. But I think we will need a kind of case by case, country by country support in terms of what that transition needs, depending on who's going to lead at country level, how that's going to be, how do we make sure all of the different actors and the areas of work on HLP are included in the new cluster. And so we're here to keep supporting that. So we will be available as we are now to do that process. And that includes the information management, the support and the tools that are available through Trezor and other colleagues as well. We're going to be working towards a new website as the kind of a window into this new cluster. And also in the meantime, we will keep the HLP section within the Global Protection Cluster website. They're redoing their website, but we've agreed with them to keep HLP as part of that, at least for the next year or so. And then beyond that, because it's a key issue in terms of how we understand protection risks and all of these things as well. So they're the main things to say. The HPC 2026, as we I think have talked about previously, it was agreed that HLP would stay with protection for that. So that process that you're all probably working hard on at the moment, or is going on in the countries where you're working, is continuing with HLP within that. But I think things will start to change next year, led by the humanitarian coordinator and their team in your countries. And I think one thing to say is that what we're expecting is that there will still be very much the need and the presence of HLP working groups, spaces where you can coordinate and understand what's going on in HLP, places where you bring those actors together and make a plan about what's needed. And we'll be looking at ways to support that within the new cluster structure. So that's the kind of update in terms of the structure there. Trezor, did you want to say something quickly about just the information management support into next year and how we're looking at that?
Yes, thank you, Jim. So I thought that it will be also important to give a quick update on what has been done this year. So this year we continue to work with the global protection cluster, and also HLP contributed to this protection cluster streamlined approach that was adopted this year. And as a part of this streamlined approach, there is this integrated protection cluster framework that now include HLP activities. So if you open this integrated protection cluster framework, you would find HLP activities that are already linked to protection pillar and program modalities. So the idea of this, it was that when different operations are in the planning phase, when they are asked to provide HLP activities, they will just pick one or two activities from the list and adapt it to their operation. And also, we know that in your country you may have adapted some of these activities. So we'll be happy to receive any feedback if there are any HLP activities that you added to the list in your operation. We'll be happy also to receive to have a feedback on that as well. As in January, there will be a learning activity that will be conducted by the operation cluster just to see if this framework has worked as in your operation. And also, we continue to support the operation. So this year, a dedicated support was provided to Somalia, while other operations such as DRC, Burkina Faso, Cameroon, Mali, and so on, they were supported remotely. And also, at the regional level, together with the regional ICLA advisor, we are working on an advocacy note on due diligence, and this is to be published in the coming weeks. I would also like to mention that the tools that were developed for one supported country may be adapted to another operation with minimal effort. So this includes, for example, a dashboard that was, for example, created for one operation while being supported. This dashboard can be adapted to another operation as well with minimal effort. And also we created an infographic template in PowerPoint format. So the idea was, for example, if a working group with no IM support, if they want to publish their dashboard or their bulletin, they can just use this PowerPoint template that they can adapt easily. So in the left, you see the Power BI dashboard template, and on the right, you can see the infographic template in PowerPoint format. So in case they need to adapt anything, they can just edit this PowerPoint format. It's easy to update. So next year, as Jim said, we'll continue supporting the transition process and work more with the information manager of this new cluster. The collaboration with the global protection cluster team will remain, but this will be minimal. So I'll continue to collaborate with the information manager of the GPC, but this collaboration will be minimal. And also, information management support will continue the next year. So for those HLP working group remaining as they are, and also for those who will be merging as a part of the new cluster, so both will continue receiving the information management support. Thank you.
Thank you, Trezor. Thank you for that. So that's a little bit about how the IAM support will continue into next year, what with the new cluster, but also with a lot of you working in similar areas and more broadly to bring together that analysis on HLP. And we'll be looking at how we integrate that with the new cluster so that we can really start to see these kind of more joined up ways of looking at the information and all that we have around shelter, site management and HLP. So it's potentially quite exciting to bring those things together, but it also has some uncertainty with it. So I wanted to pause now and open up for any questions or comments on anything so far around the new cluster. We've got the lead agencies, the name, maybe still some open questions around what exactly it's going to mean in different countries for different times. I know some of you are at different stages in the process in the countries you're working in. For others of you, you might be wondering what this means for the general conversation around HLP and how you see it. But the main thing to emphasize is that the new cluster, of course, is working with Shelter CCCM colleagues very closely, but is also going to be about bringing all of the aspects of HLP work into that space. So it's not just HLP for Shelter, but it's actually going to be a way of bringing in all the elements of HLP as well as those that work with our colleagues in the kind of Shelter and CCCM programming areas. But would love to hear thoughts, comments, reactions from anyone really who would have a view. You can just do a kind of finally we know some more information, or it might be that there's questions that remain unanswered and you'd like to know more about. But yeah, over to you, colleagues, if you have any thoughts, comments, reactions. Is any of this surprising, or was it all expected? Do you see these things affecting your work in any way, either at the moment or in the future? Do you have any questions, anything that wasn't clear or that I went too quick on, or maybe is still an open question? Yeah, Stuart.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. I guess it was surprising. I I don't know why. I mean, for some reason, I felt like it would be cleaner in the sense of like, well, I mean, operationally, I know that CCCM, is with IOM some places. Here it's with UNHCR in Ukraine. But that hasn't, I don't know, that hasn't been defined. Shelter, I felt like always was kind of UNHCR, but maybe it's just the countries I've worked in, and that there was no, I don't know, you said that it'll be kind of worked out and there'll be a role for HLP technical working group, but they're not necessarily like represented by what would be considered kind of a traditional organization doing HLP. So yeah, I mean, but then again, like at the country level, I mean, it's country operations are sort of set up the way they're set up, right? So here, Shelter Cluster is, is UNHCR and CCCM is UNHCR, and so I assume that necessarily wouldn't affect country level operations, but I just kind of found it interesting at the global level. Over.
Yeah, thanks, Stuart. I mean, they're really good questions and good points, and you're not alone in thinking, "Hey, hang on, how does this exactly fit?" So, whilst UNHCR are stepping back from the global level leadership, they have been saying that doesn't mean they are stepping back from country level coordination and leadership. And I think it's going to be on a case by case, country by country basis, depending on what the arrangements are in country. Because say there's a shelter cluster being led by UNHCR that's working well, and the decision is to keep that going as it is, then there's no reason why that would have to change if that's the agreement. Equally, if clusters at country level are combined, so you have Shelter, CCCM, HLP, then there'll be a question as to who then leads that. And it doesn't flow that it automatically is the global lead agencies would lead at country level, just like it is now. On HLP, for example, NRC might be one of the lead agencies at global level, but in some places where NRC isn't present or they're not best placed to lead, then they don't. Someone else does. So, and that principle still applies. So, so it will have to be worked out on a country by country basis. And I didn't say it in a formal way, but the understanding is that NRC is going to play a lead role on the kind of HLP thematic area of this new cluster. like I mentioned. So there is going to be provision for HLP coordination within the structure. It's just we haven't finalised that structure yet, so I didn't want to say things that I shouldn't be saying. But yeah, there is a wide appreciation that we need to make sure HLP stuff is still coordinated. There's going to be so much opportunity to make sure that's integrated with what the shelter CCCM colleagues and others are doing, as well as the other work that we're going to be keeping doing within the same sort of spaces that the protection cluster are also working in. So there's going to be a clear need for that. And when we're talking to country level colleagues, it's saying, well, yes, there will be a need for some kind of HLP coordination within that, probably a working group or a technical working group, at least for the transition period, and then let's see where we are. But yeah, so those things are a little bit unknown and we have to work them out as we go. But at least we have now the global structures sort of getting put in place. We're going to know now what capacity we have there to support from the global level as well in the coming weeks, which I think will be helpful, because this last few months it's been a big question. No one's been sure about what's going to happen exactly, what contributions agencies and others are going to be able to make. So we're kind of taking steps forward on that, and I will make sure to keep you updated next time we meet. So that's thank you for those questions. They're very pertinent. Anyone else, a question or a comment? What do you think of the name? Does it make sense? We didn't have cluster face or just HLP, unfortunately, but we did get one that I think covers the areas we work in, but be interested in your views. Osman, yes, please do come in.
Hey, Jim, thank you. I think, first of all, from my side, happy to see now that at least a decision on the leadership is clear. We now have a driver to take us through. Many other things now will be probably coming soon, especially having the guidelines you talked about and etc. Just like what Stewart also said, a little bit surprised, but on the other hand, I think at country level, we've been seeing some of this coming, discussions going on and etc. But yes, I'm happy also to see that within the structure, the HLP has been maintained as a thematic area, and we'll continue probably to, pushing in for the areas we've initially agreed to be the priorities, advocate for, and etc. That is a very good. Perhaps my thinking also is on whether there is any rotational arrangements, perhaps at global level, discussed whether within the thematic or the overall leadership of the new merged cluster is something probably if you have answers to, you can also clarify. Second, I'll comment on the IM. Glad, Trezo, thank you so much. Of course, the support this year in Somalia was very good. We're really feeling it up now. We're looking forward for further support, especially now that we have this new cluster. Of course, at country level, Somalia is continuing status quo, remaining within the protection cluster in the 2026, and plannings have already reached midway, almost even 75%. And also, I'm happy to hear that some of the countries are actually starting within the new cluster from January. So it's a good opportunity to learn probably within the year, next year, to see how they are faring in the new cluster. Yeah, I think those are my comments. Thank you, Jim.
Thanks, Osman. Thank you for those comments. And you asked about rotational arrangements. I haven't established anything like that yet. I think the lead agencies will be there for the cluster for now. In terms of how we get that global support team to really make sure the attention is there for all the different aspects of the work, I don't know exactly yet. But I know, for example, from the NRC perspective, there's a commitment to the role that I have, the role that Trezor has for the next few years at least. And I know that others like UN Habitat, UNHCR are looking at how they're going to contribute to this. And others are welcome to think about how they might be part of this new cluster as well. Those conversations are going to start soon, and will come more clear hopefully for that. One thing to mention is that there will definitely be a need to think about how we do that sort of capacity building. How do we make sure, if the new cluster is active, that those who are coordinating it know what they need to know about HLP, so they know enough to make sure those things are included. So we'll be thinking about that as well. Let's have a look. So Julius, you ask, is it possible to set up and run an HLP working group within the new cluster? Yeah, we believe that that's what will be needed, and we think that that's what will happen. In the same way that the protection cluster are expecting to have, working groups for GBV and child protection, we see that it's very likely that there will be a need for that within this cluster. In the same way that all clusters will have working groups focus on particular issues, the shelter cluster has many working groups and technical areas of communities of practice and issues that they look at. And we think that there's going to be a real need for that for HLP, not only on the thematic issues and the substance of HLP, but also in how we coordinate, how do we make sure that works well in a response. So yes, that will be the case. People are kind of keen to make sure we don't just create another AoR, but I think it's realistic to say that there is going to be a need to bring actors together on HLP in the same way that if you were in the WASH cluster, you would bring certain actors together on a specific aspect of the work that you're doing. So we expect the same in this cluster as well. Jane, yes, please, over to you. Oh, you're muted still. I think we don't hear you yet.
Yeah. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes,
I've
we
been
hear you well.
representing the UNDRR stakeholder group, and I know that NRC and has been a part of that, as well as the International Federation of the Red Cross. But I want to make sure that some of the work that we've been doing on disaster risk reduction is incorporated. And I noticed that you had something in there about climate, but I just wanted to put that in there as one of the areas on resilience and building back better and things like related to that area. And then I had a question about how UN Habitat and the Global Land Tool Network, is that in any way engaged? Are you coordinating at all with GLTN or any of those types of groups? Thank you.
Great, thanks, Jane. So I'll just share very quickly again, just that slide on the proposed scope. So yes, you're right. You can see there climate, environment and energy. And then also there is within that sort of cross-cutting thematic area, making sure we're engaging with disaster risk reduction. And that's partly based on the work that's already being done within the shelter cluster. And certainly, whereas HLP, we've also looked into those issues as well. And we see that as definitely an important part of what the cluster is going to be looking at. So yeah, thank you. Well noted on that, and really good to keep pushing for that. And I know, having spoken with IFRC and IOM, that they're very keen to make sure those things are in there, that we're aware of how do we make the links there, all those things. On the question around UN Habitat and the Global Land Tool Network, Eleonora, you probably have much more to say on that than me. Just briefly, I would say yes, definitely we will keep working with those colleagues there as we are doing at the moment. But yeah, Eleonora, please do come in.
Thank you, Jim, and thank you, Jim, for the question. Well, UN Habitat and the Global Land Tool Network, clearly, we hope to we will continue engaging with the cluster under a different role, but from our side, what we feel that is very important, and we fully support the leadership that has been chosen for the new merged cluster, but is to make sure that all the knowledge that has been acquired on the work on land by UN Habitat and the GLTN partners is brought into the new cluster, so that all the lessons learned and the approaches that have been learned in the different contexts can keep being applied by the new cluster. So this is our priority, making sure that the knowledge acquired is brought into the new cluster, and we will continue supporting, we envision to continue supporting the HLP work and to support with the knowledge management component for this new cluster. So this is where UN Habitat and GLTN will continue coming in the new cluster.
Thanks, Eleonora. We'll turn now to Hama first, and then to Abdurrahman. So Hama, first to you.
Okay, Jim, thank you so much. But I will speak in French, sorry.
That's okay.
Ok, je voulais dire deux choses. La première des choses, nous sommes dans une année, une phase de consolidation des acquis, c'est-à-dire de capitaliser et de nous renforcer. et ce changement arrive. Et ce changement qui arrive implique une façon ou une autre façon par rapport aux bailleurs, par rapport au financement. Donc, votre conseil, comment est-ce que nous devons nous tenir? Quand je dis nous, ce n'est pas seulement nous en tant qu'organisation COLID ou LID, mais je pense beaucoup plus aux organisations internationales. Ça, c'est une question. La deuxième, ce n'est pas une question, mais c'est un message de plaidoyer pour dire, oui, nous allons changer de cluster, nous allons changer de lead global et cela va impliquer des changements et peut-être penser à dire au nouveau COLID, ce n'est pas le moment de tout changer puisque les partenaires locaux qui sont avec nous sont des partenaires qui ont acquis beaucoup de compétences et beaucoup d'expérience au fil des années. Ils ont pu dissimuler les outils avec nous. Donc, de garder ça en tête au lieu de vouloir changer de façon radicale tout le système. Merci. Je ne sais pas qui peut traduire.
Thank you, Hama. Trezor, would you be able to share? Here we go. You've written it in the chat. Does this upcoming change imply a different way of working regarding allocation of donor funds? And the cluster and the lead will change. This might be an opportunity to request that things do not change immediately at the country level. Yes, so there's no pressure on country level to change right now. That's not something that global level controls. It's the choice of the humanitarian coordinator and their team or the resident coordinator to decide on the cluster structure within their country. So that's one that will depend on the choices made by the people in country. So in your case, in DR Congo. And yeah, whilst they might well look at what's happening at global level and decide to follow that, they also might say that we need a different system here or we want to stay as we are. So there will be that discussion. In some countries, I know the HC is very keen to get the new cluster established quickly. In other countries, they are waiting to see and even keeping things separate. So there's very different ways of approaching it depending on the context. Whatever happens, wherever HLP is, whether it stays in the protection cluster in your country or if it moves to the new cluster, then we as the new cluster will be available to support. So if you stay in the protection cluster in country because that's what's decided, we will still support you however you need it for HLP, and we'll find a way to do that. So that's just to say things will be different at different countries, but we will be supporting from the global level as we are now, and hopefully even better than that. The question on the allocation of donor funds, I think it might change things in terms of how those donors that look to fund and work with shelter related activities may well also now see more opportunity to include HLP within that work. I think there's still the same processes will be in play around SURF and country-based pool funds. They're trying to enhance those, make them more ready to fund and support national actors, local actors. I don't know. It's going to depend on what the donors are interested in. So if a particular donor is supporting protection activities, then they're going to probably want to have a conversation. But I would say this is a real opportunity to really kind of bring protection issues around HLP and protection risks into the work that Shelter and CCCM are doing. So in a way, there's an opportunity, I think, there to suggest donors are better able to bring protection outcomes into the work of Shelter and CCCM programming. But that's, going to have to be, again, a conversation that happens. Happy to talk more offline separately if you would like. I'll leave it there just because of time. Let's go to Abdirahman, if you'd like to make your comment or question, and then we'll move on to our presentations.
Thank you, Jan. And though I'm very interested about and I'm a team of about the UN Habitat and land portal and all of global working. So, and it's my field, and I'm very interested about the land issues and land dispute. I have been working for a local government for 10 years. So I'm very interested about this issue, and I'm trying to prepare an land and dispute resolution in Somalia, though I live in Somalia, Mogadishu. So, and how the UN Habitat Support facilitates and population. So that's all. I thank you.
Okay, so you're interested in like publishing some research you've been doing around Somalia. I think I saw around land grabbing and land disputes. The best thing would be is to talk to Osman, who is also on the call, who spoke earlier, because he coordinates on the housing, land and property responsibility in Somalia. I don't know if you're already in contact with Osman, but if not, I would suggest talking to Osman, and I can share his contacts if he might have. Oh, he is still on the call. Osman, maybe you can contact or be in touch with Abdurrahman. Yeah.
Yeah, Osman, thank you. Okay.
Yeah, I'll reach you by letter or share my email, Abdurrahman. Thank you,
Thank
Jim.
you. Thank you, Osman. Thank you, Jenny.
Perfect. You're welcome. Great. Well, thank you, colleagues. And any more comments, questions, please, you're welcome to put them in the chat, and we might well have some time later on for some more discussion. But thank you for your engagement, and I'll be quick to share information with you as soon as I get it. And please do always feel free to ask me, Eleanor, or Trezor, if you have questions, if you have concerns about what's happening and what's changing, then please do let us know. Okay, so we'll park those big kind of slightly annoying but necessary conversations around structures and coordination things to the side, and we'll now hear from people working on HLP issues in the responses. And first, we're going to turn to our colleagues in South Sudan. I think Aya, Adao, and Margaret are going to share an update from the HLP AoR there on work that's going on in South Sudan. Shall I share the slides, or would you like to? I'm happy to.
It's up to you, Jim. If you want, I can share from my side. If you prefer, you can share from your side. What works best for you?
I don't mind. It's only if it's helpful in terms of internet connection. So maybe you go ahead, because then you can move them at your own pace, and I will be here on standby in case needed.
Sure. Let me just share. Can anyone confirm if they can see them?
Yes. Yep, we see them.
Great. Great. Okay, great. So basically, I'm Aya, the Housing Land Property Co-Coordinator in South Sudan for the National AoR, and I'm also double hatting as the HLP officer for IOM South Sudan. So let me So basically, in South Sudan, it's a bit of a unique context where we have areas where we have active development projects like disaster risk reduction and infrastructure of schools, hospitals, and other activities that usually need HLP support in them. And we have donors who are always engaged in ensuring the phasing out and the closing of camps and vouching for finding solutions for the displacement. In other areas, we have emergency places where we provide emergency support. So in some areas of the country, we have floods. In other areas, we have conflict and active conflict. So the response on when it's related to HLP, it's based on the location and the specificity of it. We have both emergency and development, and we have floods and we have conflict. When it comes to the key HLP issues in South Sudan, these are the filtered ones. we have a lot of secondary occupation cases that are increasing with time. We have a lot of cases related to land grabbing, which is mainly have high political or financial capable people doing it. And also people in the government, and we have illegal land transfer. We have the family disputes mainly focus on the right of inheritance for women, which is a serious challenge. And then we have multiple allocations where one plot can have 7 to 8 owners for the same plot in different names and different categories. We have also renaming of places, which is an issue, and I'm saying it's an issue here because basically it's a tribal country, and in certain areas there is communities that name streets and locations based on the community and the ethnicity that they come from, and then once this name changes, it causes a lot of issues if it's not handled properly and it's not facilitated with the community and the government. We also have a lot of issues related to land formalization and climate and environment. The climate and environment mainly is related to the floods. We have two main areas that are usually flooded during the rainy season to a point where you have to use canoes to move within the town. Which we are actively working on. And then we have a lot of violation of women's HLP rights, as women in certain areas are perceived as a property and not as a person. We also have a lot of unlawful expropriation of community land. As I mentioned, in South Sudan, usually the land belongs to the community, managed by the government in coordination with the community, and the land types are private, community, and public, and the community one is the most common one. I'll hand over from here to my colleague Adao to take us through the overview of the effects of the humanitarian reset and also what have been the efforts that we have been going with, especially with your support, Jem. And thank you for visiting us in South Sudan last, I think, 2 weeks ago. And over to Adao.
Thank you, Aya. Hi, everyone. My name is Adao. I'm the HLP AoR coordinator in South Sudan. My colleague has taken you through the overview, the HLP issues in South Sudan. Now I'll take you through the overview effects of the current trends in HLP in South Sudan. One, we have the significant rise in displacement and new arrivals from Sudan. There is a big number of overflows of returnees from Sudan. Then we also have conflict-related destructions of homes and property. We've recently had conflicts in the Upper Nile and Jonglei of South Sudan, and it has led to destruction of people's properties, homes, and land. There's also a high demand of land availability and use in South Sudan that has been caused by high return of people from neighboring countries due to the Sudan war, the changing of refugee policies, especially in Uganda and Congo, and then internal displacement due to floods and conflict. Next slide. As we wait for the next slide, I can't see the slides moving. From these trends, how do they impact on HLP? One, South Sudan has a legal pluralism and land policies covered in statutory and customary laws. As much as there's synergies between the statutory and the customary laws, there are a lot of differences that are affecting the land governance in South Sudan. Number two, overlapping land claims between IDPs, returnees, and host communities. From the conflicts, a lot of conflicts happening in the country. The returns of the returnees from the neighboring countries and the IDPs, there is a lot of one land is being claimed by very many people because IDPs are maybe claiming it, the host communities, and there's competition of land from these displaced communities and the returnees. And then there's increased secondary occupation, forced evictions, land grabbing, and other land-related disputes. This is because of the large number of people coming into the country, those from the IDPs who are trying to integrate into the host communities. So it has led to you find a land and you occupy that it's not yours, or the refugees that are already occupying lands being evicted by the host communities. There's a lot of taking other people's plots, lands, unlawfully, and then there's so many other land-related issues that have happened because of the crisis that I've talked about. And then weak land tenure and rule of law in the country, hindering progress on resolving land disputes on all levels. In as much as the weak land tenure system and the existing ones are being overwhelmed because there's so many land cases that are going on, and this is hindering the progress of solving these land disputes on all levels, at the county level, at the national level, in the PIAM, even in the grassroots levels. And then there is also the humanitarian strain right now that happened, where most of the funding cut that has led to strain with the humanitarians trying to provide HLP support to the returnees and the host. Now let's look at the priority actions for the HLP AoR in South Sudan. One is to provide rapid HLP support to the displaced communities and integrate climate and flood risks into land planning. Strengthen alternative dispute resolution mechanisms to promote resolving land disputes in a peaceful manner to ensure we evade further conflicts. And then ensure transparent land allocation processes to enhance systems. So in as much as we do not allocate the lands, we're trying to advocate and talk to the right stakeholders to ensure that land allocation is done in a transparent manner with consultations from the community who own the land and with involvement by the right authorities in the government. For me, I will welcome the coordinator, Margaret, to take us through the next one. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Adele. Still benefiting from that trip in terms of all that we are planning for 2026. So in regards to the issue of the merger, way forward on merging of the HLP AoR with shelter and CCCM clusters in South Sudan. For South Sudan, there's been that active kind of discussions in terms of HLP AoR, shelter and CCCM coming together. And with all these discussions we've had, the HC or the our humanitarian coordinator actually instructed that the merger should happen at least by January early next year, 2026, where she sees that it's good for us to move in together or to move together as one cluster. We have all welcomed this in terms of the HLP colleagues, the shelter colleagues, and the CCCM colleagues, and we've ended up having quite a number of coordination meetings. That is from the sub-national level. We are informing most of the partners in the different states, at the national level in terms of all the partners all over South Sudan, and also in consultation with our global team, that is Jim, on what is expected of us as the new cluster. But all these conversations in terms of how best to move forward in 2026 have been put on pause because we were waiting for the global directive, which we got some of the answers when Jim visited us on the way forward for the new cluster. And with that, the discussions that have happened for South Sudan, we've already shared amongst ourselves, that is HLP, Shelter, and CCCM, our different strategies so that we can proactively start trying to see how best we can harmonize our response come in 2026, though the suggestion or our last meeting was that we go back to our lead agencies per each the shelter cluster, CCCM cluster, HLP AoR, to see how best they can speak on that level so that it becomes an easy transition and an easy merger when we come to now finally merging. Maybe just something to note or to put out there is, as much as the merger is, is being fast-tracked, we as the HLP AoR are keen to ensure that we get as much as the other clusters, despite the fact that we are just an AoR. We see that it's good for us to move together as one, and eventually, once we are one cluster, we can be able to have better programming, better coordination, and all that. So in a nutshell, I'll say that is the update from South Sudan in regards to the merger. I think we are already somewhere, but we're expecting to get at least better information and even more updates, hopefully by early 2026. With that being said, I'll say thank you so much to the co-colleagues and also for the opportunity to present. Over to you, Jim.
Thank you, Margaret, Adao, and Aya, for the updates. And yes, I was fortunate enough to visit a few weeks ago now, and spend time with the colleagues there, like understanding a little bit more about the context, but also what's happening with the mergers and the discussions. And I think it was interesting to see, like, when you set out there the key impacts on HLP and the key issues, just how much those issues are integrated across questions that would arise for people working on shelter settlements and durable solutions and all these things. Like, we know that there's a need for more integrated HLP across all the way a response works, but I think it really struck me clearly in South Sudan how that is the key there, and some of those issues that are coming up. There's another conversation going on, isn't there, around area-based coordination and how that can work in places as well. And again, more opportunities for, I think, ensuring HLP issues are included. But yeah, so thank you for that. So I wanted to open up for any questions or comments from colleagues either working in South Sudan or who want to say something in response to that presentation. I do have a question, colleagues, if I'll jump ahead while people think about it. You mentioned that there were overlapping land claims between IDPs, returnees, and host communities. And one of the places we visited was where there was a community who'd been displaced for about 12 years, I think. They were on some land. It had been a protection of civilian camp. That was no longer the case. It was now a place where they were trying to survive, trying to live without support, without services, but they were stuck because whilst the government might have said they could move to certain land, there were communities that were resisting that move, and these people were stuck where they were. So I just had a question about, like, how do you see some of these issues being resolved? Because it seemed like the legal pluralism you mentioned, the kind of different ways of engaging with land issues were quite stuck. So I just wondered if you had ideas and what you've seen work and how you were trying to address that as an HLP AoR with your partners. So yeah, that's a question from me. And I acknowledge it's not an easy one.
Yes, Jim, thank you for the question. And I think maybe one of the things we are trying to do is bring all the partners in the room. As we went to board the in Jonglei State, where Jim, you're mentioning, we are able to, one of the recommendations after our 2-day workshop, which had different stakeholders, was to ensure that the key issue, which is now them not having somewhere to settle on, is catered for, or it is that problem is looked at, because by the end of our workshop, we were able to get a way forward where there's a task force that will be following up on how best they can be able to get land that the government had promised to allocate to them due to the fact that they do not have anywhere to go. So one of the key avenues we are using is stakeholder roundtables, where we bring all the partners in the room and we see how best we can be able to handle these HLP issues together by allowing each stakeholder to give their own view on how best to handle it. We sit down and we see, for this example, I think the task force, and we're also following up with the board team, they have said that they've already secured a meeting with the governor. So we are hopeful that with that meeting, we will be able to get a resolution to this matter. So we are taking each step at a time to ensure that at least the matter is identified, the different stakeholders understand what it is, and we try to find solutions amongst the stakeholders. Over to you, Jim.
Thanks, Margaret. Aya, I see you've unmuted. Do you want to come in on that one as well?
Yeah, sorry, just to complement, basically what we do is first we start with assessment to understand the HLP challenges and the main challenges. The scenario that you have mentioned is basically because we have different tribes from different locations, and part of this IDPs that you have met, they are not only conflict affected IDPs, some of them are also flood affected IDPs. And basically the main aspect of them existing in a protection of civilian location is because until now it's not declared that it's safe for them to be integrated within. And this is one of the Sudan is how to redesignate the POCs, because the first discussions was how to reintegrate the POCs to become a camp, but now due to the funding constraints, we are navigating the option of how to shift them POC and ensure that there is proper solutions for the people who are in the POC to return to their areas of origin if accessible, or to locally integrate within the community, or to relocate to another location, which might be acceptable for them to stay there. And when it comes to HLP, as I mentioned, and Adawa also mentioned, so basically we have to ensure proper coordination with the communities and proper information of what are the things that they will be allowing us to do, and what are the things that it's red lines for them. And then we take it forward in the discussions with the other communities, ensuring that the government is leading the process and we are just providing technical and operational support. So basically this is how we have been doing it, even with the let me give you another example and a scenario in an area called Wow, where there is an IDP camp. And in the IDP camp, we have relocated until now around 500 households from the IDP camp to another location that was given by the government in coordination with the communities in the same location, but in another area where the community is building their shelters by themselves and they are locally integrating with the host community. I hope we answered your question.
Yes, thank you both. And yes, any other question or comment? Okay, well, thank you, colleagues, for presenting on what's going on for your work in South Sudan. And yeah, if anyone thinks of any other questions, comments, please feel free to write them in the chat or just raise your hand. I'm going to turn now to colleagues working on the response in Gaza and Palestine to give us an update on what's happening there. Obviously, lots of change in some ways since we last met together. I thought it would be useful to hear how things are being seen from an HLP perspective. Obviously, HLP a massive issue, not only in the response, but also the thinking around the longer term recovery and planning for that. So Shireen, good to have you with us, and I'll hand over to you. Shireen coordinates the HLP Technical Working Group along with Haneen on behalf of NRC, and Haneen with UN Habitat. Over to you, Shireen.
Hey Jim, hey everyone. Thank you so much for this opportunity. It's good to be with you all, guys. I'm going to share the presentation. I'm Shireen. I'm as you mentioned, the HLP Technical Working Group for Gaza, the most complicated context now for HLP. And let me just go through the presentation. Yes, I think this is. And tell me, please, when it's on.
It's on its way. Yes, there it is. We see it.
Yes, great. So Gaza HLP context is really complicated. It's before the war of 2023, but it's also getting layers of complicated issues to the service after the war. We're talking about the challenges before the war. It's the complicated legal framework in Gaza and also the loss of documentation, but also after the war and many of issues were in the service, especially after the ceasefire recently. The whisper displacement was one of the issues that we faced since 10% of the displaced person resident in collective centers now, and they moved for multi locations due to many reasons. One of the weathers and others for evictions and other orders from municipalities and landlords. The scale of physical destruction has created a very huge debris burden that stopping all the efforts to restore a basic living conditions, especially with the lack of legal framework for debris removal and other issues. We are talking about a huge number of overcrowded displacement sites, especially with limited access to adequate shelters, and this is specific for particularly vulnerable groups, since we are talking about 80% of the buildings in 81% of the buildings in Gaza were affected and destructed. In some areas, there's high lease fees and eviction orders, as I mentioned before. The one tent, it's and leasing a very small, for the capacity of one tent, it's almost like $1,500 per month. And also we witnessed many places and many areas that eviction orders from municipalities for many reasons, but we check and we follow up on this with our partners inside Gaza. The destruction has erased the property boundaries, and that triggered a lot of disputes among the families, and especially that there's a lot of missing persons and inheritance issues and submitting or registering a death registration. And also in other cases, we witnesses a lot of secondary occupation. Many people are back to their area of origin, and they found someone who's taking over their properties, and that lead for huge disputes. As I mentioned, also the legal framework governing the HLP in Gaza, it's really complicated when it's come to many laws and regulations, as the Ottoman laws, English and Egyptian, and also the unclear authorities and the role of who is governing now and who is the government active now inside Gaza is one of the layers of the challenges that we are facing. Also, one of the challenges that the capacity and the lack of the capacity for the sectors and the authorities, like land authorities and others as Sharia courts and other public entities, because in some point the huge destruction, there's no capacity from the employees, and also the huge number of missing persons. This is mostly the challenges, and more we are facing in Gaza multi challenges that it's updated every single period of time. Since the ceasefire, we witnesses a lot of eviction orders. We witness a lot of weather conditions that lead people to move from their areas, and also the lack of the material that enter to Gaza as a shelter or during the through the pipelines, and this is an issue and challenge that we are facing along with the shelter clusters. What is our recovery planning or steps? We are working on like a very communication network between our partners inside Gaza as an NGO, UN agencies, and their activities. We are, as an HLP Technical Working Group, working as a platform to exchange experience and lesson learned. We closely work also and raise the advocacy messages through our coordination with ICCG, GHOC, and protection shelter site management clusters within our plan. We are doing some kind of, our plans is doing like the assessment and mapping, working on identifying and prioritizing the critical HLP needs, which I said it's like day by day or maybe period by period. We used to have like a lot of layers of challenges, the gaps, and we conducting assessment tools, supporting our partners, also working on physical door-to-door damage assessment would be conducted soon. We are working also on a lot of mapping the legal and examining the challenges regarding the HLP rights in Gaza and conducting a stakeholder analysis, mapping the protection and mechanism as an ADR, the Mukhtar communities, and other available disputes resolutions within the context of Gaza. We worked closely and publish. I will share the HLP Technical Working Group relief web page, which is all the technical guidance there. It's for debris management. Thank you so much, Jim. The mine action, which is not finalized yet, we are working on it. Negotiation with the landlords for the sites management, due diligence, and other emerging priorities. Other tools as the legal framework and the documentation in Gaza, and also other emerging issues that was raised by our partners or due to the need. We are working on closely with our partners also on a very good plan to raising the awareness and raising the capacity for our responses and our partners from the legal side and paralegal as well, so for HLP raising awareness, alternative dispute resolution, and women HLP rights, delivering mainstreaming trainings for members and interested cluster. Also, we are planning to do so with our colleagues in shelter and site management clusters as well, and also raising awareness within our stakeholders as well and affected population along with our partners. Now the operation activities, it's really varied, and I want just to list one, like a very small sample. Our partners are working along with the HLP Technical Working Group to support the displaced family through the rental and contract between the landlords and tenants, especially after getting many challenges and many disputes within people who signed a contract with not the owner of the land, or they were being like a subject of forced eviction. We are talking about awareness session conducted by our colleagues and our partners like NRC and other local NGOs, raising the awareness and also of HLP rights, legal counseling and assistance ongoing. We are talking about alternative dispute resolution, and list of the training focus on developing many peer-to-peer model, expanding to like the trainings for the youth and women lawyers as well, focus on HLP rights. One of the issues that we are facing now, or like we are focusing on the analysis and the advocacy, identifying the HLP advocacy priorities and targets, initiatives, and along with our, for example, the statement, the press statement, along with shelter cluster, important to the rights to be HLP, like the reconstruction to be based on rights, and also the why HLP matters, which will be like published and shared soon. Restoring the legal and administrative system. This is one of the issues that we are advocating for, like reactivating courts and registration office, and also following up the fate of the digital records, since one of the challenges that we are facing is destroying the physical records of the land records, and we are talking about the fate of the digital records now, where and how it can be accessed to the public. The recovery principle is, as I mentioned, is to focus on right-based approach, ensure all the reconstruction respects HLP rights, inclusive prioritize of vulnerable groups by raising awareness for women, IDP, and people with disabilities, and also reconstruction aligned with long-term planning, urban planning. This is very much since like our message here, recovery is not only rebuilding homes, it's restoring rights, security, and long-term resilience. So we are raising awareness, advocate, and working along with all our partners and our like raising our voices. This is very much everything from my side. I'm ready for questions or concerns. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Shireen. That's really helpful to see the overview of some of the challenges and the ways in which you're like trying to address those and plan with others. And again, it strikes me just the connection between those things that are about that immediate response that we need to try and be pushing for, and also the links with the much longer term thinking and planning and the institutions and the other things that need to be functioning for HLP issues to be addressed. But thanks, that was very, very interesting. Colleagues, over to you for any questions or comments or response. Yeah, Jose, nice to see you. Welcome.
Yes, hello. Sorry for my voice. I have a bad cold. So my question or comment is, are we planning to do a bit of advocacy on the right to restitution? And in Gaza, not only restitution, but when restitution is not materially possible, compensation. No, I think it's a very obvious HLP right in this context, but I don't see it anywhere, in any advocacy note so far. But the reality is that in a situation with mass destruction, mass displacement, with such international attention, there should be a discussion on, what kind of procedures are going to be put in place so that reconstruction, return, and when that is not possible, compensation is given to the victims of displacement. So I think that's a gap at the moment, but that's more a comment than a question. And the question is, I have seen in social media that there's been some sort of a mission by the UN team working with the World Bank, EU, etc., to assess damage with a view to this reconstruction under the office of the Special Coordinator for the Middle East Peace Process. So, do we have more information on this, and what are the plans to set up this, institutional, formal reconstruction process? Over to you.
Thank you, Jose. Thank you so much for your inputs. I agree with you for the the compensation. Yes, we are working on some advocacy messages to raise the rights of the debris for people and the compensation. But it's also when it comes to Gaza, it's still not clear. And also very complicated when it comes to know exactly what is the next step, since the coordination is a very high level, but also we are working on, as I mentioned, on a very higher advocacy message of the reconstruction and based on rights, also a compensation and the rights of our participants in Gaza. For the other question, if I may understand you, it's about the assessment that it's conducted by our colleagues in UNDP, along with yes, the HLP Technical Working Group is part of this efforts of this is what I said about the door-to-door damage, physical damage assessment. It would be conducted soon. It's not yet active, but it would be conducted soon, and we're very keen to put HLP and to include HLP elements in this assessments, and it would be like more focus on the area that it's like almost 50% of people populated areas, so we can have a clear idea what is the challenges, what is they need support from our side, and it's gonna be like a huge work, but it's not conducted yet, but we are working on the assessment tool along with addressing HLP issues in this assessment. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Shireen. Carol was also asking in the chat, is there, are these findings getting to, for example, US government? How are these issues being kind of shared beyond those that are working specifically on these areas? Is there a way in which this information is getting out? And it maybe links to this wider question of the need for advocacy on things like restitution as well. Yeah, just a quick question on that one.
Yes, thank you for the question, Carol. Yeah, we are conducting a serial number of meetings with CMCC, the US government, with the military in Gaza, who's planning to do some kind of collective maybe sheltered in Gaza, but also we were keen to address that HLP issues is really important to be addressed. And to be honest, I feel optimistic and positive about receiving this kind of, yes, there's a lot of challenges when it comes to proving ownership and HLP issues in Gaza, but still we need to address HLP issues and to be prioritized in our context. So it's still there. It's the discussion is still going, and addressing HLP is going to be there. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Shireen. I think it'd be really interesting. I don't know. I see there's a couple of links there in the chat to check out as well around these issues. I think it would be good to think about maybe together we need to convene a small group to do some of that kind of advocacy that is less focused on the operational response and more those kind of bigger questions. And that could be something we should be looking at doing. I think, yeah, my question is who's best placed to do that? How do we do that? And I think that could be something that's really worth doing. So I'm trying to pull together the different experiences and voices on this. So yeah, thank you for raising it, Jose, and Carol, thanks for your question too. Great. Okay. Well, thank you. We will leave that there for just now, except Maddie, I saw you raise your hand. You can't get away with it. Please do come in.
Sorry, this is Maddie from
please.
IOM, working on the Gaza response from the site management side rather than the HLP side, but I've been sitting in this Civil Military Coordination Centre that Shireen mentioned for the last month. So also just wanted to share that the US military is developing a white paper on what HLP, what their kind of version of HLP will look like in the next, I think they want it to be drafted by the 15th of December, which kind of feeds into the Trump plan. Some of the conversations that are being had around, I mean, there's no Palestinian voices in that room. It's really difficult to even get Shireen into that room because NRC is being blocked by the Israeli government. So it's like, I think there's a lot of work to be done, but also there's like the Israeli government perspective is really loud at the moment, just to sort of flag that dynamic as well. There's like a lot of politics. Obviously, there's a lot of politics, but like it's also, super complex from that perspective as well. But happy to kind of be a part of this conversation going forward because being sat in this room, I've also been able to kind of glean some of the thinking there. Over.
Thanks, Maddie. That's really helpful to have that perspective as well. And I think that's part of the one of the many challenges is there's all these different kind of fora spaces where people are discussing these things or not, or with certain voices present in some and not others. And yes, that's a really useful insight. So thank you for that. Carol asks, are there tenure voices in the room? So is that like, Carol, could you just expand slightly on that? I know you have to go in a moment, but just in case you're still there. Maybe she had to leave. Okay, good. Well, that sounds like there's something to follow up on there, especially within the context of the new cluster as well. Like thinking about how do we collectively do some kind of advocacy around this and look at bringing something together. So thank you, colleagues. We have 1 minute left. Now, you will have seen in the agenda we had an item on Nigeria. I've, in consultation with the colleague who was going to present, has very graciously offered to present that at the next meeting, given that we have run out of time today. So my apologies, Alison, and thank you for your grace and kindness on that. It was to share a briefing that's been released. So I will also circulate with the minutes the link to that. But the final thing was, Eleonora, just a quick minute from you, please, on the thinking about next year, the survey on the sort of priorities and ideas that people might have. It would be good to do that, and then we'll have a moment for any other comments, questions, and then we'll finish. But yeah, Eleonora, over to you. And apologies for my timekeeping today.
No worries. We just wanted to, the reflection on the merger of the new cluster and what this means for next year, we sort of had a bit of a chance to discuss it already during the meeting. But we're very keen to hear from you if you have any questions that have not been answered through this meeting, or that maybe you didn't feel to share with all the colleagues regarding the merger, what it means for you, or what it means at global level, any questions that you might have, what do you see being the priorities for the new merged global cluster for the next 6 months. We will also like to hear if there are any technical areas that require more support at country level. So what is your perspective on that? If you anticipate, what are the benefits and the challenges that you might anticipate from this future merger? And also if you see that maybe it could be useful for you, any training tools or guidance documents, we would like to hear about that. So we will reshare also the link in the chat. We created a short form where we would be happy to hear from you what you think about these points. You don't have to answer all the questions. You might be interested in answering just a few of them. It can be anonymous, or you can leave your name and contact if you would like us to get back to you, but that would really help us plan how do we see going forward the work in 2026. So here there is the QR code, and I will share the link also in the chat. And yeah, we hope to get some questions or feedbacks from your side. Thank you.
Thank you, Eleonora, and we'll circulate that all in the follow-up to this meeting as well. And I'll also include the links that have been placed in the chat as well, some around Gaza, but also other areas as well. Okay, so we've reached past, so that's the end of our allotted time. Yeah, but just a minute in case there's any last comments or yeah, reflections just on today's call. Or feel free to write something in the chat. But yeah, otherwise, just to say thanks so much for joining us. As I mentioned at the beginning, given the reset and a new cluster, you know, the areas of responsibility are disappearing in their official form. So this is the last meeting that will be called probably an area of responsibility meeting. But we will be meeting again regularly to talk about HLP areas of work within the new cluster context and beyond. So this isn't the end of that. But yeah, thanks so much for joining today and for all your inputs and contributions. And we will, yeah, keep in touch on the developments around our structures, but also let's try and push on this suggestion around some kind of advocacy on the rights to restitution. I think that's a real good call, and it'd be good to see what we can do to find the right avenue for that. But yeah, thanks again for all your inputs, and yeah, we'll leave it there. And if you want to put your camera on to wave bye, it's always nice. But otherwise, lovely to see you, and all the best for the rest of 2025.
Thank you.
Look at this, happy smiling faces. Thanks everyone. Cheers. Hey, Joseph.
Hi.
Hi. How's it going?
Good. I was just wondering, could you keep that